So in the last class, we left it an interesting part. We were analyzing each verse, how the mental state of Arjuna was. So until 23rd verse, where we saw, he still shows up his kind of interest or his zeal in fighting the battle against the Kauravas.
Kauravas.
Yeah. The spirit of challenge was still there. So he asked Lord Krishna to stop the chariot in between the battlefield so that he wanted to see who are ready to fight against him. And Lord Krishna, as per Arjuna's request, takes the chariot, places it in the middle of the battlefield, and talks the following words. I think we left it in the, yeah.
He uses the word
Yeah,
Kuru from
Kuru,
the
yeah. So this was the shloka that I think we left out, the next shloka, I think. So in this shloka, he will tell that. So the array of the people who are surrounded with Bhishma and Drona, you see all of them, and see all the Kurus who are in front of you. So that was the word Lord Krishna said. And after that, this is all Sanjaya's narration. So Sanjaya is narrating all these verses. So he sees, so Tatrat Pashyan Stitan Partha Pitrunata Pitamahan. So he has seen there all the people and considers them like he sees fatherly like people, grandfathers, teachers, maternal uncles, brothers, sons, grandsons, friends. So all these relationships, he starts to feel okay. On the opposite side, I see my father like people. I see my grandfather like people. I see teacher like maternal uncles, brothers. And next, this is the one that we have to start. Okay. Shvasuran sahrudaschaiva senayorubhayorapi tan samikshasya kaunteyah sarvan bandhunavastitan कृपया परया विष्टः विषीदन्निदमब्रवीत्. So he sees, he tells there some relationships and the relationship continues. Shvasuran Suhrudan Shaiva Senayorubhayorapi. So he also sees his father-in-law's friends in both the armies. Senayor Ubayorabi is in both the armies. So after seeing that, what he feels is that Krupaya Paraya Vishtaha Vishidannida Mabravit. So filled with Krupa is like deep compassion. So filled with deep compassion, he spoke these words. Vishidam is with sorrow. So with complete deep compassion and sorrow, he is speaking the words to Lord Krishna. So what happened? Why this suddenly sorrow came? He was all right till 24th, 25th also he was all right. So if you see the, so this was the thing. So Lord Krishna stops the chariot in the middle of the battlefield and Lord Krishna says, O Partha, behold these Kurus gathered together. And after that word, he starts looking at the people and starts relating them with his relationships, meaning that he brings in the emotional factor into the picture and he sees like, I see father like people, grandfather like people, all these relations come up. And in the next verse, they say that he sees all relatives in both the armies. He sees only relatives in both the armies. And he started speaking to Lord Krishna, filled with deep compassion. And all these things until 24th, which is in blue color, was all proper, like a kshatriya, like a warrior. He wanted to see the people with whom he fought with. And this word Kuru actually is the emotional trigger to provoke Arjuna to such kind of mental state. If this Kuru word was not there, he might not felt emotional. Attributing to this Kuru word, he started feeling that relationship. And we will see what all he speaks after feeling with this deep compassion. And again, there is a difference here. When we say here Kripa, the English translation for Kripa is compassion. And there is a word Daya in Sanskrit, which also has the meaning as compassion. But Kripa and Daya are different in terms of how it is applied or in terms of the intentions of the actions. And Kripa can be considered as a materialistic compassion, and Daya can be considered as a universal compassion. For example, here filled with compassion, Arjuna now says, I don't want to fight battle against these people. Arjuna now doesn't want to fight only against his relatives. But if you take the case of Gautama Buddha, Mahavir and all, they were all having this compassion, and the compassion they had, we call it as Daya, because it is not subject to any kind of materialistic results or materialistic outcomes. They are not doing it for the sake of anyone. It is their quality that they are doing it all the time. And when we see ourselves doing many things in the walks of our life, if we do the charity or any kind of thing, and if you look at the intention behind it, and if the intentions are selfless, then it will be like Daya. But if you are intentional in any kind of doing, even this, it could be a good service, it could be an act of compassion. But what is the intent behind it? Is it to get name? Is it to get fame? Or is it to please someone? Or what is the intention behind it? If there is any intention behind it, and you don't show this compassion all the times, and again your compassion comes in only with certain set of people, it comes in only when you see a certain group of people. If the same kind of suffering happens at other place, you don't want to help because you really don't have concern for that people. So that kind of things are all kripa, which is materialistic, driven by some kind of bonding or some kind of emotional things. Whereas Daya is universal. Like you can take the examples of Gautama Buddha or Mahavir. When they are non-violent, they are non-violent throughout. It's not that it doesn't matter if it is a mosquito or if it is a human being. So that kind of thing we call it as Daya. And the one that Arjuna is filled up with is Kripa. That's what he says in the previous verse. Kripaya paraya vishtaha vishidannitam abravit. So we will say what he is talking now. And one more thing to say here is that when we see the previous verse, he was addressed as Kaunteya. Tan samikshasya Kaunteya sarvan bandhuna vastitan. And each name, Krishna and Arjuna are addressed by Vedavyasa in this Bhagavad Gita has a lot of significance. Here he is addressed as Kaunteya to indicate the mental state of Arjuna. Like when you, Kaunteya is the son of Kunti. So the childish kind of attribution is done here. And I think we all know when we are childish, we are more emotional. We forget that we don't know actually what is a duty or what it is. We get more emotional. In other verses, when we see him talking in terms of a warrior, he would be addressed as Dhananjaya or Partha, Gudakesha. All these would come in when he is being addressed as an actor, as a leader and all. But here the verse Kaunteya is addressed because he wants to bring in that emotional state of a child, because he is becoming emotional now. And that's the significance of this naming of Arjuna or calling Arjuna as Kaunteya in this verse. Arjuna uvacha drishtve svajanam Krishna yuyutsum samupastitam sidanti mama gatrani mukam cha parishushyati vepaduscha sharire me romaharshascha jayate. So Arjuna started to speak. Now our hero is trying to say these verses to Krishna. And from here, you will see what all he'll say till the second chapter, 10th or 11th verse. So he's seeing all these people who are arrayed to fight. What is happening to him? His limbs are shivering. His mouth is getting dried up. His body is trembling. And he is getting goosebumps. So these are all the indications that he is giving to Krishna. Krishna, I'm just standing here, and now Drishtvaimam swajanam. So swajanam means my people. The moment I see all these my people who are standing here, Sidanti mamagatrani, so my limbs are shaking. Mukam cha parishusyati. My mouth is getting dried up and my body is trembling. Vepadushya sharire me romaharshascha jayate. So his body is getting, hairs are standing on the skin, meaning like he is getting goosebumps. And when do we normally experience all these symptoms?
When we are afraid of something.
Yeah, when we are afraid of something. So I just took from 25th verse. So after seeing his relatives, his own kinsmen, he started saying these things. So my limbs are quivering, my mouth is drying up, my body is trembling, and or my body is getting goosebumps. So these are all the indications which in scientific terms we can call it as psychoneurosis. And psychoneurosis is nothing but the feelings or the physical things that you get because of your anxiety or because of fears or because of your worries. So all these emotions were showing up on his physical body. His physical body had no problems as such, but anything in the mind manifests through the body. So this is not like a fever symptom to say that, okay, his mouth is quivering, all these things are happening, so it could be a malaria or it could be a typhoid. Because physically he was all fine. This was not all related to any kind of physical ailment. So this all came because the moment, even here he says, Drishtvaimam swajanam Krishna, swajanam. So just by seeing my people, I am feeling all these things. And this is because of his mental entanglement, or at this place where he had to view the both the parties as just soldiers, or the army as the opponents and his army without any kind of emotional entanglement. He started getting that emotional peace into his mind, which actually changed his whole mental structure. The way he felt, the way he is, both the way he's feeling physically as well as the way he is feeling mentally. Now all these four are just given to the physical, the limbs, mouth, body, and the skin getting goosebumps. We will see in the next verse what he tells more. गाण्डीवं संसृते हस्तात् त्वच्चैव परिदह्यते न च शक्नोम्यवस्थातुं भ्रमतीव च मे मनः. He's saying his Gandiva, the bow, which is his, named as Gandiva, is slipping from his hand and his skin seems to be burning all over. And he says, Brahmativa cha me manaha. His mind is swirling. His mind is swirling in the sense he is feeling restless, or he is not able to control all the thoughts that are coming in, and he is going to collapse. And so this continues to the physical symptoms as well as now finally ends up in the mind. And Arjuna, because of his mind whirling, meaning his Brahmati Vachame Manaha, he says he is not able to stand. And from this, we understand that a pillar of strength like Arjuna can collapse when facing his own personal problems. That's why even doctors take a oath that they don't operate on their own immediate relatives, because it's well proven that when the emotions plays into place with the own people, we will not be able to maintain that composure. And when emotion plays up, you will lose the ability to think clearly and rationally. And here his mental agitations incapacitate the physical body. So it started with his mind, started with his thought, that he started relating to the people. and that came down to a physical level, where physically he started all the symptoms of his legs trembling, then his mouth drying up, skin burning, all those things. Let's just understand it with an example. So there is a 6 feet plank, which I place it on the floor, and I ask you to just walk on the plank. Will you all walk on the plank?
Yes. Yeah.
Will you have any kind of inhibitions to walk on the plank?
No.
No. Okay. Now the same plank, I will place it in like 13th or 14th floor, connecting 2 buildings, and it's perfectly tested, certified by the engineers that there is no risk of fall when you walk on this plank. And now I ask each one of you to try walking from this building to that building. Will you walk?
Definitely not.
Why?
No.
Because of
The
fear
fear
that
is
we
the
may
same.
fall down.
Yeah. So the thing is the same. The moment that fear comes in, mind starts to, not only the fear, any kind of emotion comes in, mind starts to get disturbed. And when mind starts getting disturbed, if your intellect is not strong enough to control the mind, then your emotions overpower your intellect. When emotions overpower your intellect, you will lose the ability to think. And when you lose the ability to think, you will also lose the ability to act. Because you might have the skill, you might have everything, but if the mind is not stable, nothing can be done. That's why there is a story in many of our mythology also, where first thing they try to master is the mind. Only when you master your mind, you will be able to master any skill, because mastering skill is not at all a problem. Technology or anything, you can master it without any problem. But the time you have to use it, if you become emotional, whatever you learned is of no use when you're not able to use it. So the main thing to control, or the main thing to get control of, is your mind. Mind is the base. If the base is stable, you can do anything, you can do wonders. If the base is not stable, nothing can be done on a shaky base. Even though you have all your skills, you have all your techniques, you have everything, if your mind is restless, we will not be able to do our best. You all accept that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Even kids for their exams, when they become nervous, a little bit of nervousness normally helps positively. But if it overly has, whatever you read or whatever kids has read, many a times they tend to forget it because of, we call it as like tension, whatever it could be. Even when it comes to first aid, we all learn at least basic first aid, which needs to be done. But something happens to our own kid, we go blank, because the first thing that overpowers us is that emotional bondage, that we know everything, we do it for others. If it happens to another person's or another kid, we will direct them very nicely, do this, do this, do this, do this. But when it happens to our own kid, we will not be able to apply the same kind of calmness and composure. And that's what we learn here, how to apply or how to get to the stage where we will be calm and composed by strengthening our intellect and not allowing the mind overpower its emotions over the intellect. So this is a small video to just understand that mind and intellect part. I think I share again.
If a computer is password protected, we need to have the password to the computer to access the data inside it. If we do not have the right password, then what flashes on the screen is the message access denied. Let's look at the knowledge-based access to the drivers behind our actions. Actions driven by the mind clouds the issues. It leads us to a state where we become confused and lose our ability to think. In other words, emotional state denies the complete access to our knowledge base. It creates stress and leads us to failures. Actions driven by the intellect clears the air. It empowers our ability to think. In other words, we get complete access to our knowledge base. It allows us to perform to our full potential. It leads us to the path of success. All of us are born with capabilities to excel in our own field. But at a crucial moment, our mind plays up because of our emotions. All kinds of emotions prevent complete access to our acquired knowledge. Hence, we would not be able to perform our best. Many times during my exams, when I feel nervous, I noticed that I could not recollect all the points which I had studied before the exam. All of us are constantly chasing knowledge. We all need to realize that adding more and more knowledge to our knowledge base alone does not determine our success. Success is mainly determined by our capability of handling our acquired knowledge. The reflection points are: mind or emotions prevents complete access to our knowledge base. Intellect provides complete access to our knowledge base. Hence, intellect is the password to success. Thank you for watching.
So this was just to make you understand that the intellect is the main thing where we tend to think. And when that intellect is not strong, the whole thing from the Bhagavad Gita starting, we were talking a lot about intellect. And the main thing that we are actually going to work towards is to strengthen our intellect, which in turn strengthens our spiritual immunity. And we will be in a better state to overcome these kind of emotional turbulences and manage ourselves in a better way. So any questions in these 3 verses? I guess no. Okay. We will continue with the 31st verse. Nimittani cha pashyami viparitani keshava na cha shreyo nu pashyami hatva swajana mahave. Again, our hero is telling, now Krishna, I see all kind of adverse omens, meaning that we normally in Tamil say Shekunam. So he says that he is getting all kind of bad omens to start fighting the war. And he says, I do not see any good in killing my own kinsmen in this battle. So until the time he wanted to stop before the 2 armies, he wanted to see them. Now, the moment he struck an emotional bond between them, see how his own words are getting changed. And here he says, I see adverse omens in fighting this war. And I don't see any good in killing my own people. And here Krishna is referred to as Keshava, and Keshava has 2 kinds of meanings. One is like he has a luxuriant hair, and another thing is he is also killed a demon Keshi. Because of that, they say that he got his name Keshava. And in another sense, he says that Kesham is like the hair. So he has a luxuriant hair, and that's why he's called Keshava. So now from the bow slipping mind and all his physical symptoms, all his mental symptoms, he explained. And finally, he starts giving his own logic, what all he wants to give for not fighting the war. So from 31st onwards, it's all Arjuna's logic or Arjuna's reasoning for not fighting the war. And the analogy is here like, if you have a cook in your house, what do you expect from the cook every day? To cook you food. And if the cook says that I'm not hungry and I don't want to cook, how do you feel?
We may get angry, annoyed.
But do you feel that his answer is a right answer? Because he's not cooking because he's not hungry?
No, answer is not right. He is appointed as a cook, so his duty is to cook, is it not?
Yeah. So his duty is to cook. So it doesn't matter he is hungry or not, he has to cook. The analogy that I brought here is because the same thing Arjuna is also doing. He is a Kshatriya. He is in the middle of the battlefield to fight the war, and he goes in the middle of the fighting place and says that this is not good. I don't feel that this is good. So it's the same way as a cook saying that I don't want to cook today because I'm not hungry. So the sense of authority and responsibility is being compromised with Arjuna because of what? He's actually a responsible person. Because he would not have come to the war had he not known that he is going to fight war with all these people. This war was planned and he was the lead. He knew everything that he is going to fight with all these people only. But that sudden at the crucial moment when your mind plays up, then things certainly go wrong. That's what we see in many of the sports matches. You see, when there are two teams or two players in any matches come to finals, both of them are actually equally capable when they have reached till finals. So why does one person lose and why does one person win? It's always dependent on their mind at the last ball or the last match, how they maintain themselves. If they subject themselves to unnecessary stress, then they will not be able to perform their best. So here Arjuna is caught up in all emotional stupor. So he's in the state where he says always like Brahmati Vachame Manaha is almost going to be unconscious and his thoughts are not clear. He is not able to think anything much. So he says in this verse, he is not able to visualize anything raising from the slaughter of his kinsmen. And for that he says, Nimittani cha pashyami viparitani keshava. He's saying that viparitam. He's foreseeing some viparitam, meaning that he's foreseeing some kind of bad things to happen because of this war. When you look at the laws of nature, whatever law it might be, they are all infallible. They work flawless to everyone. They are the same. So I'm going to end the verses till here, and I'm just going to talk a bit on these laws of nature and how we say that they are infallible and how they really impact our lives. So this is again a scientific part of it, where we have two parts of our brain, and the major part is 95%, which constitutes the subconscious mind, and 5% of it or 10% of it constitutes the conscious mind. Our conscious mind is our thinking mind, which contacts the world, and subconscious mind is the realm of emotions, feelings, and that is the one that actually takes care of all the body functions when we are at sleep, when we are waking up and everything. And that is the one that produces the factor of intuitions as well. So the main conscious mind is only a short-term memory and the subconscious mind is a long-term memory. So whatever things we talk, that gets registered in our subconscious mind. And the first law we are talking about here is the law of cause and effect, which is called karma. So we all know that we are born. There is a reason, and whenever we take the question of birth or the question of death, there are lot of laws and there are a lot of theories. But the closest theory that relates in Vedanta is the law of karma, which we call as the law of cause and effect. So they say that when there is a birth and birth is an effect, then there should have been a cause. And if death is a cause, it should cause some effect. So by merging both these things or trying to bring all these things into a conclusion, they formed a theory because it's not practical, because no one has seen their past lives or no one can predict their future lives. This is called a theory. And as per the karma theory, what it is said is, whatever the thing that we are born today is because of our past actions. So we have certain things for which we are born, and after being born, in course of fulfilling the things that we are born for, we keep on accumulating lot of merits and demerits, which again leads us to the next birth or rebirth. And how does this law of karma works? Whatever is the cause, it will have the same effect. So if you sow a apple seed, you will get an apple plant. In the same way, if you sow a fig seed, you will get a fig plant. So that is the law of cause and effect. How do we relate it internally within our bodies, or how do we relate it with our experiences? Whatever we experience internally is what manifests externally as our experiences. So if you feel happy throughout, you attract more happiness. That is the next law which I will be talking about, which is the law of attraction. So if you give love, you get love. So the first law is the law of karma, which is the law of cause and effect. So we are the reason for whatever is happening to us. There is nothing that other people can do for what is happening to us. And when we take off how things happen around us, it is said that we all vibrate with certain feelings and emotions, meaning that we talk, we feel, everything is a vibration, and every vibration has a frequency. We have trillions of cells in our body, and each cell in our body vibrates with certain frequency. And all these frequencies put together gives an overall frequency of the body. And based upon a frequency, the law of attraction happens. So with whatever frequency you vibrate, you attract the same frequency from the external world. So when we say about frequencies, all our emotions are given a frequency value or a frequency range. So if you are going down in a negative emotional zone, then you have a lower frequencies. If you are in a positive feelings or positive emotional zone, then your frequencies are high. The simple thing is, whatever frequency you radiate, whatever frequency you vibrate internally, that is what you attract from the universe, from the external world. Meaning you feel fearful, you attract lot of fearful situations happening to you immediately. If you feel happy, you attract all the happy situations happening to you immediately. And another point that I wanted to touch upon here, because I think we talked about prayer in the last class. With related to the prayer and all, I wanted to explain the science behind all these things. In our total lifespan, we hear a lot of people giving opinions about us. Even from the childhood, there are certain things that are said. And they are all called as heterosuggestions. Whatever a person tells to you or tells about you is a heterosuggestion. And what you believe about yourself is an autosuggestion. And the subconscious mind is so powerful that it believes whatever you tell. It doesn't have a rationalizing capability. It is like, it doesn't know what is true, what is false. If you say, I'm a fool, it will believe I am a fool. If you say I'm intelligent, it will believe I am intelligent. Only your conscious mind is intelligent, meaning that it has the ability to think. From your conscious mind, all the things will go into a subconscious mind. That's why a conscious mind should always do the job of gatekeeping well. If it doesn't do the job of gatekeeping well, then everything goes into your subconscious mind, and your subconscious mind will start preparing itself without any delay. And the heterosuggestions and autosuggestions, how do they impact our lives? In all ways, we will see. So the autosuggestions can be destructive and constructive. In the same way, the heterosuggestions can also be destructive and constructive. So this is a story that was given in one of the book, The Power of Subconscious Mind. And the story is about one of the relative of the author. The relative of the author once goes to a crystal gazer, and the crystal gazer tells him that he is going to die in the next new moon. So this guy was totally healthy guy. He did not have any health problems. He still believed that he is going to die, and he made his will and did everything that he has to do because he was going to die. And when the next new moon came, he actually died. And his relatives and all went and did a postmortem and tried to get a report. And in the report, it was clearly given that he died because of a cardiac arrest. And the reason behind this is he had sabotaged his body so much by giving an instruction to himself that he is going to die. And that auto suggestion was so powerful that it caused his death. So whatever we give to our subconscious mind is very, very, very important, because whatever the other person says doesn't affect us until you believe that that statement that the other person has said is true. If he has ignored the statement of Crystal Gazer, he would not have died for sure at this time, because he was perfectly healthy. And this is another example where a constructive heterosuggestion will help a person to boost up. So there was a girl who was going for her singing auditions. She failed couple of auditions, and she felt that she's not good enough. Then she met one of her friend and she said that you sing well, but you just lack confidence. So the friend, after her friend told that she just lacks confidence, she started giving a proper auto suggestion that she can sing well so that she can boost up her confidence. And after a couple of weeks, she went to auditions and she got selected in that auditions. So sometimes if the heterosuggestion is constructive, it will help the people who are down, having less confidence, to boost up their levels. And the third example is an opposite to the first one, where they get a destructive heterosuggestion but leads it to a constructive auto-suggestion. So she's J.K. Rowling, and she always believed that the children would enjoy her stories. And what she used to do, after she wrote her book, she sent it to publishers. And nearly 17 publishers returned back saying that her story is not good enough. She did not give up. She tried with each and every publisher. And finally, I think 18th time or 17th time, the publisher took a chance and published her story. And that story is now the world famous fictional story or the fictional character, which is the Harry Potter. So here, the heterosuggestion, the publishers, what they said was destructive in the sense that it did not encourage J.K. Rowling. But what she did not put it into her subconscious mind. She still believed that her stories are good and children would enjoy her stories. So did you get the difference between the first and the third about believing?
Yes, Savita.
Yeah.
So the thing why I wanted to emphasize these things is that in the current situations also, even prayers are a part of auto suggestions. When we take about positive affirmations, everything are auto suggestions. The faith and belief that you have on that particular statement, the belief you have on anything, it could be a person, it could be an object, it could be anything. It is that belief that makes the things work by unleashing the potential within you. It's not the potential that you are getting from outside. It is the potential within you that you are unleashing to achieve the thing. So prayers also come under the signs of these auto suggestions, where you believe that things are going to happen. Or it could also take into effect of the placebo, which I'm going to cover next. So these two are the scientific theories which have been published by medical institutions. One is the placebo effect and one is the nocebo effect. So placebo effect came like this. So they tried in the laboratories. I have a short video to play. I'll play that. So the placebo effect in simple from the medical laboratories terms is that they give you a fake pill and just say that the pill is a pain reliever. So when you are having pain and you go to a doctor, you get a fake pill and you take it. And because the doctor says it is a pain relieving pill, you believe that the pill has the power to relieve your pain, and your pain gets relieved the next day, most of the times, without even taking the actual pain relieving chemical. And nocebo effect is an opposite of placebo effect, where a harmless thing can also turn harmful because you believe that it is harmful. So I came to know about this nocebo effect from a doctor, and this nocebo effect is always not a good thing to have. placebo effect is good. I always had placebo, in the sense that I don't take the normal allopathic medicines. I normally go for naturopathy, or particularly antibiotics. I am like used to have a lot of aversion towards it. So when I went to one of the doctors in my place, and I had an opportunity to talk to them, and when we were discussing about antibiotics, I told them I never want to take antibiotics, because I know that instead of side effects, instead of the effects they create a lot of side effects, and started discussing. So doctor said it's good to know about all these things and to have placebo work on you without taking pills. But what you are creating is a nocebo effect, meaning that if you are in some situation where you are expected to take an antibiotic because of any kind of reason, because I might have some accident or operation where post operation we have to take some kind of painkillers and some kind of antibiotics. So if you have this kind of impression in your mind, the effect of antibiotic will cease, because you don't believe that it will do any kind of good. Yeah, it has side effects, but it also does good. So you always don't go into nocebo, meaning that not a total aversion on that particular thing. When you, the same thing with COVID vaccine, why I'm telling us, a lot of us have a lot of apprehensions on COVID vaccine. How does it work? How does it impact and all? So let's not create nocebos. The bad thing is, if you create nocebo, even if it doesn't create harm, because of the belief that we had from TVs, from various sources, it might turn to be harmful. So when we are supposed to take something which is mandatory, let's take it with a placebo rather than having negative feelings to create a nocebo. So I'm just playing a small video to understand what is placebo.
In 1996, 56 volunteers took part in a study to test a new painkiller called Trivaricaine. On each subject, one index finger was covered in the new painkiller, while the other remained untouched. Then, both were squeezed in painful clamps. The subjects reported that the treated finger hurt less than the untreated one. This shouldn't be surprising, except Trivaricaine wasn't actually a painkiller, just a fake concoction with no pain-easing properties at all. What made the students so sure this dummy drug had worked? The answer lies in the placebo effect, an unexplained phenomenon wherein drugs, treatments, and therapies that aren't supposed to have an effect and are often fake miraculously make people feel better. Doctors have used the term placebo since the 1700s, when they realized the power of fake drugs to improve people's symptoms. These were administered when proper drugs weren't available, or if someone imagined they were ill. In fact, the word placebo means "I shall please" in Latin, hinting at a history of placating troubled patients. Placebos had to mimic the real treatments in order to be convincing, so they took the form of sugar pills, water-filled injections, and even sham surgeries. Soon, doctors realized that duping people in this way had another use: in clinical trials. By the 1950s, researchers were using placebos as a standard tool to test new treatments. To evaluate a new drug, for instance, half the patients in a trial might receive the real pill. The other half would get a placebo that looked the same. Since patients wouldn't know whether they'd receive the real thing or a dud, the results wouldn't be biased, researchers believed. Then, if the new drug showed a significant benefit compared to the placebo, it was proved effective. Nowadays, it's less common to use placebos this way because of ethical concerns. If it's possible to compare a new drug against an older version or another existing drug, that's preferable to simply giving someone no treatment at all, especially if they have a serious ailment. In these cases, placebos are often used as a control to fine-tune the trial, so that the effects of the new versus the old or alternative drug can be precisely compared. But of course, we know that placebos exert their own influence too. Thanks to the placebo effect, patients have experienced relief from a range of ailments, including heart problems, asthma, and severe pain, even though all they'd received was a fake drug or sham surgery. We're still trying to understand how. Some believe that instead of being real, the placebo effect is merely confused with other factors, like patients trying to please doctors by falsely reporting improvements. On the other hand, researchers think that if a person believes a fake treatment is real, their expectations of recovery actually do trigger physiological factors that improve their symptoms. Placebos seem to be capable of causing measurable change in blood pressure, heart rate, and the release of pain-reducing chemicals like endorphins. That explains why subjects in pain studies often say placebos ease their discomfort. Placebos may even reduce levels of stress hormones like adrenaline, which can slow the harmful effects of an ailment. So shouldn't we celebrate the placebo's bizarre benefits? Not necessarily. If somebody believes a fake treatment has cured them, they may miss out on drugs or therapies that are proven to work. Plus, the positive effects may fade over time, and often do. Placebos also cloud clinical results, making scientists even more motivated to discover how they wield such power over us. Despite everything we know about the human body, there are still some strange and enduring mysteries, like the placebo effect. So what other undiscovered marvels might we contain? It's easy to investigate the world around us and forget that one of its most fascinating subjects lies right behind our eyes.
So I played this video just to understand a bit clear about what placebo is. So when we talk about prayers also, it is also a kind of placebo effect that works upon us, the belief that we have. So anything that we have, we can use this placebo. Even like many of us believe that when you eat this kind of food, my sugar increases. If I eat this. So we have all those kind of things which actually creates a lot of nocebo. So whenever we take up an action and we are in taking an action which we cannot stop, then let's use the placebo properly instead of meaning that you have diabetes, you went to eat in a function and you end up eating some sugary sweets, then don't feel guilty. Do a guilt-free eating, and that guilt-free eating will create a placebo or neither will not create a nocebo. But if you eat it with the guilt, meaning that I know tomorrow my sugar readings are going to shoot up, if you eat with that feeling, the impact is more. If you eat guilt-free, the impact is less. This has been proven in the labs at many places, and that's why with conviction I'm saying that the placebo and nocebo are some things which play a major role in our day-to-day activities, but we might not know the names of it as placebo or nocebo. Why this nocebo came here is because of the superstition that Arjuna tried to point out. He says that he sees that bad things are going to happen. So that relates to nothing but his superstitious belief. So anyone have any questions in this?
No, Dita. No, Dita.
Okay. So I just wanted to end it up with a small snippet that I had put it from this current Australia Open. So the two pictures that I have put here is, if you have been following tennis, Serena Williams is a very established tennis player who has won a lot of Grand Slams, and Naomi Osaka is a new entry. I think like 2 to 2.5 years only her entry into the tennis. And recently she has been winning a lot of Grand Slams, and she grew up looking at Serena Williams as her role model. So when she was young, she used to watch Serena Williams matches and she was inspired by her tennis, and that's how she started learning tennis and playing tennis. And now I saw this Australian Open in February when it happened. They both met in semifinals, and Naomi Osaka won the semifinals against Serena. So when they ask in the interview, she will reply very beautifully saying that I can play the it matters. That's what in the current trend the term it as emotional intelligence or emotional coefficient. How do you handle? So she says the same thing. She was nervous in the start, but after that she made her mind that she is not Serena. She is just another competitor. And the moment you take away that she's a world #1 player, so that settle downs, that kind of tension eases, and you try to give your best. And the same match I saw with the men's where Medvedev and Djokovic tries to play. And Medvedev lost the match just because he gave up his mind, because he lost couple of matches and he gave up himself that he cannot do it. This one is not only particularly for us, but I think we can also take it up to our kids to show how we train our mind in terms of facing their challenges in their exams, in any kind of competitions, what kind of mindset will really help them to do their best. So this was the end of the session for today. I know that it was not more of a spiritual session, but I thought it would be more meaningful to relate it more to the day-to-day things and day-to-day examples so that we can relate better. If you feel otherwise, let me know.
It was a very interesting session, Nabita. Very, very interesting and very relevant to what we're going through. Very positive session, I would say. Needed this
Okay.
boost.
Thanks, Amma. Because saying it in terms of the mythology and stories would be okay, but I wanted to relate this one also. I think when I was in the quarantine period in Singapore, I watched the complete tennis match after a long time, the complete set of the Grand Slam. And from each of the person, I felt that I learned a lot of things, the way, and because I had this idea of mind, intellect and all, I used to see how each one of them are controlling their emotions, because in the match, when everybody is seeing you, a lot of things come up, and being composed, calm and playing is really something that you have to practice a lot.
Very true. Thank you, Abhita. It was excellent.
Thank you, Ma. And these were all related to that sloka. That's why I all put all these pieces, because here the Arjuna state that he did not have this kind of mental composure, as she was saying that I see both of them as opponents, and that because of that omen thing, that superstitious thing, I have bought this placebo and nocebo to make you understand that everything, even God or devil, both are our beliefs.
Distinction between Daya and Kripa, which you explained, was really excellent, I should say. I had never thought that there will be a difference between meaning is compassion. I knew that, but you will have such kind of a distinction. I came to know only today. Thank you so much for giving the wonderful explanation for Kripa and Daya. Thank you, Abhita. That was really wonderful.
Thanks, Kiti. Even for me, I learned only after I read this shloka and hearing few discourses. And when we go deep into the chapters of like 16, 17, 18, where we will clearly understand the intentions and manifestations of each action, like how it could be a daya, how could it be sattvic, how could it be rajasic, and how could it be tamasic. So that kind of differentiation I understood only after reading Bhagavad Gita, and that's where I started giving more emphasis on my intentions rather than my actions, because at the end it's the intention that purifies your action, not just the action.
And the different names that were used for Arjuna and Krishna,
yeah,
that was also really it's something new.
Okay.
Though we know that these are the names, but why in every instant one different name was used, the reason for that and explanation given was really fantastic, and that was something which I have learned today from you. Names we are aware of, but why in one particular context Madhava is used, why Keshava is used, Partha is used, and all. Excellent explanation. Thank you. Roman Anand, thank you.
Thanks, Chitti. Any questions or any feedback?
I would like to really thank you so much, Abhita, for showing the real examples, Sometimes we don't go and search these examples, though we lively see it or something. So bringing these examples and explaining to us is really wonderful. Excellent. Thank you so much.
Very nice session, Abhita, especially the nocebo and the positive and the negative. Usually it is the most common thing we do, basic mistake. Many a times when we go down, we suddenly become negative. And explaining that how positive you have to be, it was really very nice. that was a new this thing. Actually, I have come across the names. Actually, I was not so familiar with. It was really very nice. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Radhika. Okay, then I think we will end with the closing prayer. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukha bhag bhave.